This episode of Art is the Healer is supported by Arts MB, the Beaverbrook Art Gallery, and the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation. In this episode of Art is the Healer, we'll be interviewing Shannon-Webb Campbell and discussing with her her mother's ring, which she donated to the watermark process for the apocalypse painting Transcendence in Process. Shannon-Webb Campbell is a mixed Indigenous Mi'kmaq settler poet, writer, and critic. Her books include Still No Word from 2015, which was the recipient of Eagle Canada's Out in Print Award, I Am a Body of Land, 2019, and the forthcoming collection, Lunar Tides, for 2021. Shan holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia and an MA in English literature at Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador. And she is a doctoral student at the University of New Brunswick in the Department of English. She is the editor of Visual Arts News magazine. I have such gratitude to you for giving me such a powerful object for the watermark of Transcendence in Process, and that was your mother's ring. Can you talk about what brought you to that decision and what that ring represents to you?
Well, I want to say Wela'lin to you, Diana, for inviting me to be a part of your painting and to have an opportunity to look at something, an object that meant something quite a lot to my mother, and now as a result to myself, and then see it in a different light. The process of coming to deciding to give you the ring wasn't easy, because I wasn't sure what would be the right thing and what would be symbolic of my relationship to her, and also would serve what it is you were doing, which seemed almost mysterious, but also something, recognizing that giving something over, like the act of giving up an object, which may be sacred or may be something that held energy that was no longer serving anyone, was to recognize that there's a possibility too in shifting energy.
And what do you feel the energy was before and after the watermark?
Well, before, I mean, it was a ring. It was a wedding ring from my mother's, her second marriage, sorry. And it was stuck on her finger for a long time, and the stone had fallen out, so she wore it backwards for a long time. And I just remember even wondering, like, what, it almost seemed like a source of shame. And then my mother got quite sick. She had gained a lot of weight, and it was actually stuck on her finger. And then the ring fell off, and it was like the day she had been diagnosed with cancer, and for her it was such a symbolic moment. But for me, looking at what that ring symbolized in my life was, it was my stepfather's ring to her, and all the story that was caught up with the ring as that form of the object. Now with the ring being almost like the story is released, like it was no longer on her finger, she's no longer here in this physical form, and even whatever the gestures that were the promises of the ring, they don't need to be considered anymore, because the ring has become something else. It has a different purpose.
Yeah, you're one of the rare cases where I've given the object back, and now you're wearing the ring.
Yeah.
How does it feel wearing it now after everything that's happened?
Well, it was interesting to see the ring after you had worked with it, because, I remember the day that I came over and gave it to you, and I was, I knew I was giving something over, and I knew that I'm not even sure if it was necessarily mine to give, but I trusted my intuition and trusted that my mother would want something transformed. Now to see the object, I'm kind of like, oh, this is a part of an artwork. It doesn't hold the weight it once did. It's actually light. It was a really powerful object, and I remember sending you a picture of the watermark when it was happening, and that the water and the color went around the ring. It was almost took a while for whatever was happening to get into the ring and move that energy. What was it like when you saw those photographs of the watermark happening, and also when you saw that piece that had the ring, that is really the start? I see it as the start of this apocalypse. So interesting, because I think for me it's like the end of an apocalypse. But when I saw the image and saw the ring and the white mark, and this is such a significant painting you're creating for this small little ring that is very a personal narrative to be part of something larger. But it's even this idea that we need to transform. Like that's it's all of our journeys, right? Like, I mean, we're born from a mother, from a body, from a womb, and then we die, and then we become something else, and we don't know that yet. And there's something in the ring, and the ring being a part of this particular painting for me that is quite healing.
And could you explain that a little bit more? How is it healing for you?
I mean, part of it is being able to tell a story, right? I think it's somewhere that the narrative is no longer just living within me in my body. And I think the healing is recognizing that, we need truth, right? We need to tell our truths, and then we can release them. And I think, like, personally for my mother, I think she didn't like to tell her truths, or she was very protective, and that didn't always help her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That there's so much epigenetic trauma that comes down through the generations, and I feel like this generation, us at our age, have more room to process a lot of the things our ancestors haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of gratitude for you for giving me that piece of that through the ring.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very brave thing to pass that to someone, to trust someone to take care of it, because it is your story and it's part of your power.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I'm asking everybody is, how do you feel with the statement, the apocalypse is the healer?
It's loaded.
It is.
But it's like the wound is the healer, which is something I believe in, and I think I maybe wrote in a poem at some point. But the apocalypse is the healer. It's like the undoing, the collapse is, then we'll see what's left, what's there, and what actually remains. Which I think the watermark process is also an action towards that, because whatever story I was carrying with this ring, and now that it's become a part of the apocalypse is the healer, it's got a new story, and recognizing that we have to heal.
Yeah,
it's
I
our
think
job.
This is the time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
As a collective. So you're going to be sending me a recording of a poem you wrote that has a lot to do with what we're discussing. Do you mind speaking a little bit about it?
Sure. I'm going to send you a recording of Time, a biography. It's a poem from my forthcoming collection, Lunar Tides, that's coming out with Book Hug in 2021. And I wrote the poem after taking an entire course on Virginia Woolf with Dr. Lucas Crawford. And the poem speaks to what it means to be born, what it means to exist, and what it means to die. And it's in 3 parts, and I think it will illustrate kind of my intention behind giving you the ring.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana.
Time, a biography, with an epigraph by Virginia Woolf from Orlando. A poet is Atlantic and lion in one. One drowns us, the other gnaws us. If we survive the teeth, we succumb to the waves. Beginning. A baby is born in a room to a body, recognizes a voice outside the walls. The baby wants to return to womb waters. What is this room? What is this body? Living is a stretch. Doctors assign sex. Only hours until you hear tides. Nothing prepares you for life. I was born 3 months premature. Are the grandmothers in my body? Doctors don't like to answer questions. Life becomes a quest of origin. Mother reminds us why light thins. Passing into night, you return somewhere like wind. A room, body, baby, Middle. In the room, in my body, Mother tells the story of breath. I fell out of her one afternoon, nearly an entire season too early. She was floored I was able to breathe. The nurses pushed plastic tubes up my nose, put me in a glass box. Was she in the room? Was I in her body? Birth explodes a new kind of meaning. Nothing prepared my mother to mother. Sex assigned her body. The hospital staff told her to go on home. I needed to keep breathing. She needed breath. Nurses took me away, and she was left to imagine holding her baby. Grandmother was islanded in time, thousands of miles away. A room, a body, waves. End. Life happens in a room. Grief takes up with body. Mother never peed in front of me. Illness yellowed her and took her socks. Palliative care is a 10th floor view with an aluminum garden overlooking the city. Called in the middle of the night to be with her as she goes. Kin piled in cars drove downtown, followed highway lines. A woman who wanted us to be there when she stopped breathing. A woman whose body never felt at home. Death exhausts in spectacle. Nothing prepared us for our last morning together. Was I in the room? Was she in her body? I sat in the hospital window while her tiny 60-year-old body slept. I couldn't take my eyes off her chest, watching her labored breath become a final hour. It's okay to go. I imagined a baby cradled in my arms, the way she once held me. Passing my baby to her, I cried oceans over. This is the closest I get to giving her a grandchild. The room, the body, mother.